You're listening to Infinite TBR, the podcast where we try not to buy more books. I'm Smack.
And I'm Gabi. Spoiler alert! We're going to avoid major spoilers, and when we can, warn when we're going to discuss a particular book in detail so you can avoid that part of the episode. You can also check the show notes for time-stamped flags identifying potential spoilers.
We're back again after Smack winning Mysterious Galaxy Summer Bingo 2 seconds ago for us. A month ago for you, dear listener. And we just wanted to check in with each other on what we've been reading since we spent the last 3 episodes
talking about books we read 6 months ago.
In the summer.
Oh my god.
So what are the highlights since the Summer Bingo? Ooh, I've had some good ones.
Have
actually,
you?
Yeah.
Like what?
As you said that, I scrolled right by A Dragon Walks Into a Bookstore by Thorne.
God, what a good book that was. What a good story.
Yay. Oh, here we go. Okay.
Okay. So what have you been reading that you love?
Since Bingo highlights,
Yep.
the rest of the Greenbone saga, but I kind of talked about that already and lost my Kit Kat mind about it. Oh, I read Squad, which was a Smack Shelf book by Maggie Tokuda-Hall.
Oh yeah, that's
Werewolf.
a graphic novel
Graphic novel.
about popular girls becoming werewolves.
Yep.
That was real good.
Yeah.
And it got real dark.
Yup. Much darker than I was expecting, even though I kind of knew it was. The cover is beautiful,
yeah.
but very much suggests...
Moody. That was good.
I said Mean Girls and friendship and high school and belonging and family and sapphic werewolves and rage.
So much rage.
So
It was
much
so good.
rage.
I have another book by her that I've been meaning to read called The Mermaid, the Witch, and the Sea.
Oh, I keep forgetting that's her too.
I know!
That's
why
been on my
I keep...
list forever.
Mine's an ebook.
Dang it! I was about to. You knew I was about to.
I knew you were.
I like how I spent all today bitching about the fact that you give me too many hard books, and now I'm like, why are they all ebooks? I can't
Like
win.
literally hours of this. You know, I didn't even make that connection though. It's been a long day. Oh my goodness.
Nothing But Blackened Teeth by Cassandra Khaw, which we both
read. Which I got in paperback and handed off to you. And it was nice and short, so you got it back. That was real dark.
That was on my Halloween read.
That was really gross.
It was very
And-
haunted house.
Yes. And it escalates very
Yes.
quickly.
Yes, it does.
When it escalated to the final climax and something terrible happens, I remember being like, well, so what happens is there's a spell that they want to enact to save someone's life, and it requires a human organ.
Oh, right. So, yeah, it's this group of friends who end up in this haunted house, basically.
They don't even end up. One rich one rents out this Japanese mansion
As
that
like
is
a pre-wedding
very, very haunted. Where
for the wedding, actually.
for the wedding.
Actual wedding,
because
yeah.
like in college, these friends would go into haunted houses like on purpose,
Right.
and like that was their thing. And so 2 of them are getting married. So the rich one rents out a haunted mansion in Japan, in the middle of nowhere, of course, because
Right.
there's no one to get help.
But
from.
as adults, they're not particularly close anymore. Like, they're all kind
Right.
of estranged.
Yes.
And there's a lot of attention between,
there's
like, every pair of them for
and the
different
main
reasons.
character has just gotten out of like a 6-month stint in a
Right.
psych ward. And like when she was there, this is not a spoiler because it comes up pretty early. When she was there, some of them came to visit her, but the one she'd been sleeping with, that she was like half in love with, got married, and everyone else went to his wedding. And like just weird dynamics.
Yeah.
Just weird dynamics.
Yeah.
And it gets weirder and weirder because she is so comfortable with her inner demons. For a long time, she's the only one who sees what's actually happening.
Yeah, there's
The
like a
outer
weird mix
demons.
of like, especially the MC, but like different people realize there's something going on at different
very
points
different points.
and to different degrees.
Yes. And at a certain point, they start to realize that, like, this is supposedly our world. It's a contemporary world story. So, like, they know horror tropes.
Right.
And, like, splitting up in a haunted house is a terrible idea.
Yeah.
And, like, so they don't split up and they do these things. And the guy who got married without her is like the smartest person there besides her. And he's like, we're not splitting up.
Mhm.
I am the comic relief. That means I die early. You're the queer one. That means you die also. We are not, we are not going to be stupid about this. And the climax relies sort of on the reader being aware of their awareness of haunted house tropes.
Yes.
Which I think threw a lot of other readers. It has very mixed reviews online.
Right. And the language is very poetic and delicate and complex and nuanced.
Yes. And that's not what everybody wants out of a haunted house story.
It's not all just like the story. It's also vibes.
Yes. Lots of vibes. It was very good and it was super dark.
Yes.
Although to return to that thing where they needed an organ to save someone. Right. And I was like, well, I guess you could cut out somebody's tongue. That's an organ.
Yeah.
But no, they went full Monty. It got dark.
Yes.
Which, that's the one thing I was sort of disappointed by. Is like,
that it got too dark?
No, that like there are organs that you can live with losing.
Yeah. There's that, and the thing that bothered me is the type of thing that sometimes bothers me in this kind of setup where they start following rules that are not firmly established. Like they suddenly decide, oh, to fix this problem, this is what we need to do. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, according to whom? You've just decided that if you follow this ritual, it'll fix everything. But there's no evidence to suggest this will actually do anything.
Right. And part of that is them relying on haunted house tropes.
Yeah.
But like there is that sort of like leap that they all make almost simultaneously, not quite simultaneously.
And like that's quite a leap to make without being sure it's gonna work.
Yeah. But then it does work, and by the end of the story, both you and the main character are looking back and going, okay, well, it wasn't just like a leap of faith, it was like they wanted this to happen.
Yeah.
This way. Like this was a self-fulfilling thing.
Yeah.
So that one was Nothing But Blackened Teeth by who?
Cassandra Khaw.
Cassandra Khaw. God damn. I have a couple of her other books.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they are hardcovers.
So actually the thing that bothered me more about this, I think, than anything else about the story was how awful everyone was to each other.
Everyone was so awful to each other.
And if that is a consistent feature, I'm not sure I want to read another one. Unless it's more like spooky vibes and it's Halloween and I'm looking for spooky regardless of their dumb relationships.
That's why I picked that one up when I did, is because it was October and I had to do my newsletter and I wanted like Halloween reads.
Yeah. But even despite that, like the variety in the characterizations was so good.
It was.
They were
really
all very
good.
distinct characters with very distinct personalities, and they were very true to those personalities throughout the story.
Which is why, like, it was a little weird that they would elect to spend so much time together.
Yeah.
Because they were very much their own people, and like they had this horrible, knotty, tangled background with each other.
Yeah.
Everybody has these very individually tangled relationships per person, and then
but very toxic, like
super toxic
all the way around,
every which way, to the point where the one who got married while she was in the psych ward, that was like one of the healthier relationships.
Yes. Believe it or not.
Yeah. Oh, I guess we could talk about the Elder Races books. Oh my god. Okay. This is going to be a journey. So I've mentioned I got sick like in the fall of 2022, and I spent 2 months.
The dead-eyed stare you got. You were like, how long?
It's a long time. And I was so out of it during that time that the only thing I could stomach was like mediocre paranormal romances. That was the only thing that I could wrap my head around. So I read The Elder Races and I read Angelika, Frankenstein Makes Her Match.
Oh yeah.
Which had some issues.
I was going to say, you weren't thrilled about that one.
I read that one in a day.
Who's that by?
Sally Thorne, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, Sally Thorne wrote Angelika, Frankenstein Makes Her Match. And I mean, if you go look at reviews online, the first thing that tends to come up is that Angelika Frankenstein is a horrific person.
Oh no.
And
not in a fun, portable meow-meow way.
She's not, she's deliberately not a good person, but like the author didn't seem to realize that picking and choosing pieces of dead bodies to create her perfect lover is grosser than it sounds.
Ooh.
Like, I get what the author was doing, is like they were both sort of terrible and they both insisted that the other become a better person. But like, if I had been fully functioning, I probably would have gotten about 20 pages in.
Oh, okay. But you read the whole thing.
I read the whole thing. Because what else am I gonna? I paid for it. It's my book. What else am I gonna do? I know. So I read that in the midst of all of these Elder Races books. So
This is the Elder Races by
I can't remember her name. Thea Harrison.
And just so you know, what we're about to get into, Smack has described this as her, I was about to say Greenbone Saga, not that. Green Creek Saga.
Yes. The gay werewolves that we spent 2 entire bonus episodes letting Gabi rant about. So I am not going to take 2 episodes.
You say that now.
I know.
I didn't plan to take 2 episodes to talk about Green Creek.
I just let you talk.
Future Gabi here. Smack did not say enough for 2 full episodes, but she did say enough to earn her own bonus episode about the Elder Races by Thea Harrison. So keep an eye out for that bonus episode in the near future, and in the meantime, we will just fast forward through here.
Oh my god.
Anyway, back to what we've been reading since the summer. That was the Elder
Please you talk now.
Yeah, I'll take the next one on my list that's worth mentioning, that we may have, I don't remember if we talked about it on here at all, but Lobizona and Cassandra by Romina Garber.
We have mentioned them, but I didn't know how to talk about them without spoilers, and you hadn't read them.
They're so good!
They are so good.
Future Gabi here again with just a quick informational note. During our conversation about Lobizona and Cassandra by Romina Garber, we mentioned ICE a few times, and for those who don't know, ICE is the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which is a federal law enforcement agency under Homeland Security that is essentially a distillation of everything that is stupid and bad about America's immigration policies and procedures and the criminalization of immigration in general. So that's that. So Lobizona is like, if you...
Argentinian refugee werewolves in a magic academy.
Yes. So if you too are just disappointed and let down by the state of a certain very popular magical academy, we recommend you take...
Of any magical academy.
Any magical academy. But this one really brought back some of those good vibes, but was really so different.
It was like it's
nothing to do with that at all.
Night and day from Harry
Potter.
But
the idea is that this... I forget how old she is when this all starts, but...
16.
Yeah.
Something like that. She's a teenager.
Yeah.
These are YA books.
Yes. I forgot to look for those at Mysterious Galaxy. Oh, I'm waiting for Cassandra to come out in paperback. That's what I was waiting for. Anyway. So, she is... I'm also like, how can I talk about this without spoilers?
She is
the first female werewolf.
Right, but she's also an illegal immigrant in Miami, I think it is.
Yes.
And so she and her mother came to the U.S. together, and they're staying with sort of an adoptive aunt
/ grandmother.
And the mom tells her that she is working as a maid for a rich family who are putting together legal papers so that they can join this path to citizenship.
And she's homeschooled
because she has these crazy eyes.
Yeah.
And
her name's Manuela, by the way.
Yes.
Manu.
Yes.
So it's very obvious that she's not human.
She has like star eyes,
right?
Right?
When she was a kid, I think they like tried to let her have friends for a bit, and then the first time, like, she had to wear sunglasses everywhere, and then there was a thing with a pool at a party, and sunglasses came off, and there was a whole
like
dun, dun, dun.
Like the kids were weird about it, but the parents were even more weird about it. Like,
so from that point on, she was homeschooled, not allowed to have friends, and the whole thing is her mom's basically trying to keep them on the DL. And her professed reasoning for that is to keep them off of ICE's radar.
Right. Which is
the normal
legitimate
human.
Yeah.
And for the first part of the book, you're like, sure, that's extremely reasonable. Oh, America.
Yeah.
Yay.
No.
No.
Not even a little bit.
So
there's this like genuine fear
Oh, yeah.
of an ice raid through most of the book.
yes.
It's as legitimate a source of tension as anything
Yes.
supernatural that happens.
But this is before even the supernatural angle
Right.
comes into it. And then you have a whole set of supernatural stakes to
Right.
complement
Yes.
the very real, well-known ice stakes. And so eventually she finds out...
She's separated from her mother and hops in the back of a guy's truck.
Yeah, she's trying to figure stuff out about her own
Right.
history.
And this guy has been super shady outside of her apartment building.
Yeah.
So she hitches a ride surreptitiously in the back of his truck
to find out more.
And ends up in the middle of nowhere and jumps out and then walks a while and then is like mistakenly assumed to be part of this like tour group.
Like incoming group of students
of
at
Werewolf
orientation.
University.
or
Yeah.
whatever. But it's interesting because it's a very whole different gender dichotomy but really strict gender roles where the boys and men in this supernatural society are werewolves and all of the girls and women are witches and do
Is
magic.
no overlap.
There's no overlap. And that's not because the author's ignoring. That's the whole point, is that there's this commentary on gender dichotomy, and there is that exploration over the two books over, well, where's the room for exploration of identity,
And
gender identity, and
And
all that kind of
especially
thing.
because like Manu is a werewolf.
Yeah.
She's also very obviously female. Like
Yeah.
she identifies as a girl, but she is a werewolf.
So
And
her first ex, I don't remember how long she gets away with it, but she
It's a
just
long
flies
time.
by the seat of her pants trying to
'Cause
pretend that she's a witch.
Yes, and she gets help from like her couple of classmates.
Yeah, kind of acquires friends.
But like it's a miracle she makes it as long as she does.
And she's keeping several secrets. So first it was just, she's not actually supposed to be enrolled at this school.
Right.
And then they're like, okay, we'll cover for you. You're not like real, but like, you're one of us, whatever. And then it's clear that like, she's not a witch. And then it's, she's a werewolf. And then there's stuff about her family. It's like,
Yes.
there are just layers upon layers of secrets. And
Yes.
they're all getting peeled back one at a time. And
it's very stressful.
then her friends have their own secrets
Right.
and relationships. But their dynamics are so great, though. Such
yeah.
good friendships.
Yeah.
Slash relationships. Slash...
Everything.
Ah! They're so good!
Yeah. The second one though, what did I say? You were like, I saved the screenshot because it was like,
Gotta dig through our pictures. In my review, I said, definitely too much like the real world to be anywhere near escapism, with an ending to match, but such an important read with an overall message of hope and resilience.
okay. And then she texted me. So she texted me this great screenshot of this like very tense moment at the end of the first book. And then she was like, time for Cassandra, I'm so scared. Also friendship! And I was like, I don't want to say you should be scared, but I can't think of anything else to tell you.
I do remember that.
I'm also trying to not use the words most emotionally devastating book I can remember reading, but here we are. It is genuinely, like, Cassandra hurts to think about. It is one of those.
Yes.
It's up there with Codename Verity, I would say, in terms of emotional
I
devastation.
haven't read that one. That one is by...
Those are completely different books.
Right. Elizabeth Wine?
Wine. Yeah. So, Codename Verity by Elizabeth Wine is completely different. It's historical fiction, but it also destroyed me for completely different reasons. But it's just, you know, you have a couple of books that you collect along the way through life that leave you, you know.
Sucker Punch.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Cazador is one of them.
Yep.
But, like, it's such an important book.
So important.
Oh, God. It hurts because these
It's too
stakes
real.
are so, the stakes are so high.
Yeah.
And you're sort of expecting everything to end badly.
And they're pretty powerless.
Yeah.
Is the thing. They're up against, like, they're fighting...
Generational systemic prejudices.
Yes.
That are codified in this society,
Mhm.
both socially and literally
Right.
in their laws. And there's only so much you can do about that. And so you don't really expect the worst to happen.
But the whole time I was like, I don't understand. Like, this can't end well. There's no way for this to end happily.
Yes.
To its, like, full...
To, like, a
fully
happily.
Happily, yeah.
There is no happily ever after.
It can end not tragically, but it can't end well.
Yes. And it does end... I mean, it's...
The end suits... Ends as well as it could have. Honestly.
But, like, she doesn't die.
No.
I will say it's a small spoiler. She doesn't die. But, like...
It hurts.
Oh,
it hurts so bad.
It took a turn that I didn't expect it to. It was devastating.
It ends in a way that very few books would dare to end.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it was a huge editorial leap.
Mm-hmm. Risky.
Yeah. Because...
It's funny because I remember, this probably won't mean anything to you because you haven't read The Descendant of the Crane by Joan He, I think. But that book, similarly to Cazadora, there's the arc of the whole book. And then the epilogue is from a different perspective.
Oh, no.
That, in The Descendant of the Crane, the epilogue kind of twists everything you thought you knew was going on in the book. And reframes the whole thing.
Oh, no.
And haunts you for the... and you're not sure.
You have this very, like, haunted look.
The Descendant of the Crane was wild for a lot of different reasons. But in the same way, the epilogue was very different. And not very different, but it's not from the same perspective as
the rest of the book.
The rest of the book. Because it couldn't be.
Right.
And...
The epilogue almost
and the way it was
hurt more.
Yeah.
Because...
I don't know how to describe it, but...
The main book ends, and it doesn't end happily. But, like, you're still focused on Manu. You stay with her through the verdict and the aftermath. And then in the epilogue, you go back to her friends and how they are trying to cope.
Right.
And in a way, they have it harder in that they still have to fake a whole lot of stuff to keep their secrets and to keep going in this vague hope that in a couple of decades everything will resolve.
Yeah.
And
it sucker punches you.
And that's in contrast to Manu's parents, who show back up in the second book. Like, they're fairly major presences. And you get their backstory and how when they were Manu's age, all this shit happened and they thought it was going to be okay. And then it wasn't. And they've been waiting for decades for it to be okay. And it's not.
And that's one of the themes of both books, is this idea of a lot of this went down in the last generation.
Right.
And then Manu's decisions are always, do I make the same decisions, follow in the same footsteps, but I know how that ends?
Or do I try something else?
Yes, to see if we can get further.
Even though when she tries something else, she knows it won't end well, but she is hoping that future generations will end better.
It's all about, like, making the choice to fight so that other people can keep fighting.
Yes, and deciding that your fate matters less than future generations and what they have to deal with. And it... We're both a little traumatized.
Yeah. Such an important read. So good.
Oh my god.
Ugh. So that happened.
I almost forgot about that. That was a while ago since
I'd forgotten. The Love Con happened by Sarisha Glass. That was cute.
What?
The City We Became.
Okay, hold the thought. I need more water.
Ah!
And then you can lose your mind. Okay. The City We Became.
The City We Became.
You need to recap. The City We Became was by N.K. Jemisin.
Yes.
It is the sequel to...
No. The City We Became is the first one.
Oh, it is the first one.
We've mentioned it at least in passing before on the podcast.
Gabi loves it.
I love it so much. Smack's not as obsessed with it.
It was
that's
good.
Okay.
It just didn't hit all my happy
I
bones.
couldn't tell you why it hit all my happy bones.
I was surprised by how much you loved it.
Some of my love for it depended on whether certain things would happen in the second book, and I got what I wanted out of the second book, so that's fine. So the second book came out late last year.
Late 2022.
Yeah. And it was The World We Make, and it was interesting. It wasn't as good as the first one.
Oh.
Only because, and she talks about this in the, like, author's note or whatever at the end, that it was originally going to be a trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
And then Trump happened. And, like, first of all, she had this whole arc planned with a very specific character who was basically Trump. And then Trump came along and was Trump. And she was like,
well, now I can't,
do that.
about it.
And then the pandemic happened. And she just didn't have the bandwidth to turn her plans into a trilogy. So, but she also wasn't just going to leave her reader stranded with
That's wonderful.
the first one hanging where it was hanging.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't a cliffhanger,
No.
but like it was very clearly the first of more than one.
And they didn't completely eradicate the big bad.
Right.
The big bad's just kind of left hanging over Staten Island.
Fucking Staten Island, man.
Staten Island!
I'm sorry if you live in Staten Island.
So the second book ties everything up, but you can tell that
it was a struggle.
It was not even that was a struggle, but that what should have been 3 books got condensed. And so it shows in some spots. There were a couple things where I'm curious, but can guess that they were not planned from
the beginning.
Some very cool twists,
mm-hmm.
but I don't think they were planned from page 1. And would have been cooler if they had been executed as if they were in mind from page 1. But I still enjoyed them. I enjoyed the biggest twist. Laura was making fun of me. Laura also read these. Laura, number 1 fan, Laura. She kind of read them, not with me, but she recently finished the second one because it finally came to the library. And she was making fun of me because Manhattan, the overall premise of this book is that cities, once they reach a certain point, are born and are alive in a way that on a different sort of metaphysical plane. And there are city avatars that represent those cities and are the cities. And usually, I don't even know that usually after the role we make, but in most cases, it's one person who embodies the soul of the city. But New York was going to be born into one person, but due to some birthing complications, I think is how they describe it, gets split. So there's a person representing each of the boroughs plus one person who represents kind of all of New York and kind of holds them all together. So in the first book, the primary avatar is kind of out of commission and is kind of in hiding.
And the rest of the boroughs have to rescue
Yes.
him.
But the rest of the boroughs, they have to kind of learn as they go. They have some...
And when the original single avatar of New York was born, they had a sort of a mentor. Not a mentor, but like
Sao
a different
Paulo.
avatar. Yeah.
Sao Paulo came along and kind
of help it.
Yes.
Like midwife the whole thing.
Yes.
And
that's the idea, is usually the next newest city is supposed to come help the newest city
mm-hmm.
through the birthing process. And again, things happen. So Sao Paulo's running around in the first book trying to find the boroughs and figure out what happened and get them all back together. The individual boroughs are kind of like, there's some, not institutional knowledge, but like knowledge, they're instinctive knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
But not enough to really, and there's this big, bad, metaphysical Lovecraftian
so like it would be hard
horror.
enough for 5 boroughs to be born instead of just the one.
Yes.
But there's also this Lovecraftian horror trying to break through into our plane.
Yes.
And that makes it hard.
Yes. And it becomes clear, I don't know if it becomes clear over the course of the first book or the second book, but it becomes clear that this Lovecraftian horror has been interfering with cities being born for a long time, but in very subtle ways.
So nobody noticed.
And nobody noticed. And plus there's this very interesting dynamic that they get into in the second book when you meet other cities, which was the part that was so cool, but would have been more cool if you gotten more of them. But there wasn't enough time, again, just a duology. But there's this attitude that the older cities have where they kind of don't want to get too attached to new cities because new cities often die either during the birthing process or very shortly after the birthing process. And there's some like raw feelings for some of the older ones who like befriended cities and got to and like and then they die. So until cities become more established, they're more inclined to just kind of let them figure things out on their own, and they kind of write them off. And so as newer North American cities have been like, hey, there's some shit going on that we all need to deal with, and it's a problem for everyone. They have this attitude of, you're nuts, you're babies, you don't know what you're talking about. We all had to go through this, but they didn't. So like there's that whole dynamic going on. But anyway, Laura was making fun of me because Manhattan is a poor little meow-meow. Do you know this?
No, I don't.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I have to
Detour time!
Detour time. I have to send you this beautiful scale that not explains it, but a poor little... You know what a blorbo?
No.
Oh my...
We started 0.
How to explain this? So... I'm gonna find this first, and then I will try to explain it. Because if I send it to you and you look at it, you can maybe help me explain it. Okay. My understanding of this, I'm sorry, internet, if I get this wrong, but a blorbo, usually in the context of...
Spelled like B-L-U-R-B-O?
B-L-O-R-B-O.
Blorbo, okay.
Blorbo. Usually in the context of watching TV shows or engaging in a fan space, blorbo is your character, the one you are most heavily emotionally invested in, whether you should be or not. And then there's this, like, blorbo scale where a poor little meow-meow is someone who has done bad things. Okay. They're not a good person.
Okay.
They might be morally gray, but they're inclined to stab things, let's say. Or they may even, like, fully be a villain, but you're just very emotionally invested in them because they're just such a great villain.
And this is all relative.
This is all relative.
Okay.
And then there's, on the scale that I just sent Smack to kind of explain this concept, on the other side of the scale from poor little meow-meow is beautiful cinnamon roll, too good for this world, too pure.
And then the center of the graph, it's like a color line,
yes.
Green to red. The center of the graph says blorbo from my shows.
Right.
I find this thing very interesting in that more good, the green side is to the left, and then the red, the villain side, is to the right. I feel like this should be opposite.
I think the idea was, they're specifically addressing / explaining poor little meow-meow. So the idea is to emphasize poor little meow-meow. And also
the more evil side of this graph.
I think people's discourse about their poor little meow-meows comes up a lot more than people's discourse about their cinnamon rolls. I feel like people don't disagree about cinnamon rolls nearly as much as they disagree about what constitutes a poor... and whether someone is worthy of the poor little meow-meow. Then I could very easily explain poor little meow-meow if you'd seen CQL.
I have not.
Because one of the biggest poor little meow-meows, this is very hard to say out loud as many times. One of the biggest poor little meow-meows floating around is Shu Yang from Chen Qingling, which is the Untamed, which is that Chinese show I can't shut up about. He's not the villain of the show,
right? But
he is the most on-screen villain of the show, and he's the one most obviously running around forking with them and killing people left and right, and violence and and then he has a sad backstory. That's often a feature of the poor little meow-meows. They have a very sad backstory. Doesn't necessarily, like, excuse their current actions, but it makes your little heart go, poor little meow-meow.
Okay, I understand this concept.
Another example, as Laura and I settled on, is Marina. Marina
is Gabi's
poor little
cat.
And
she is not a fictional character.
No. But she's a demon.
Adorable and can be the sweetest, like the nicest, most gentle and cuddly cat you have ever. She's gorgeous, but that child has some evil in her. Not just claws, she has some evil in her.
She has a demon in her.
She does have a demon in her. And there's no point in trying to exercise it because it's just part of her.
Oh, yep. I don't know what she'd be without her little demon. So that's poor little meow-meow. So Manhattan.
One day when I get around to like doing our show notes, I'm going to include that video that I sent you of when I was cat sitting for Gabi and she went to Hawaii for work. And Marina was so angry. She was so pissed.
She made horrible noises I've never seen her make before.
So, like, they're very normal noises when it's just her and me.
Never once in my life have I heard her make that noise in front of me.
11?
10?
11
and a half?
So a decade, and I am apparently the only person who's ever heard these noises, because she hates me, but I'm better than no one.
It's so a lot of people,
and she doesn't hate me when Gabi's around.
No.
If it's just me, it's like, why the fuck is what is the point of you existing in my space?
and people who are familiar with cats will be fascinated by this video because the cat body language compared with the vocals makes no sense.
Yeah.
It's very...
You cannot trust Marina's body language.
It's perfectly
Ever.
happy body language. She's sprawled on her thing. She's scenting it, and she's just happy.
rolling around,
But
and
the
her stomach
noises coming out of her
she
are possessed.
They are possessed. I bet we can play it.
We could sure
I have
try.
video.
If it doesn't come through, I'll just cut it out.
I mean, it's sort of...
But we can definitely load the video.
just like in post-production.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
Cool.
Future Gabi here to demonstrate the sound of the demon that lives inside Marina.
What was that? You want to do that again? That's her tail. Good lord.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is... I mean, it's interesting. It's a weird noise.
It's
but
a
like,
very weird
I'm
noise.
not a cat person. So the only frame of reference I have for cats is Marina. And Gabi...
It's wrong. I can see right now it's incorrect.
I met another cat recently. Those cats in Julian. And I don't know what to... outside that were like
Oh, right.
rubbing on
I
our
forgot about
feet
that.
and
Yeah.
shit. And I was
They
like,
were so sweet.
they were very sweet. And I was like,
they were
is
very
this
normal
what,
cats.
is this what all cats are like?
Yes.
Because you can't, like, that's the
They were
crux of it,
very
is you
friendly,
cannot trust
but-
Marina's body
No.
language. She is gorgeous.
Even if
And
you know cat
very
body language.
often she is sort of lounging or
Mhm.
just sort of, but it's a dare.
It is.
It is a trick. Do not touch her.
Mm-mm.
And she just has these angry meows.
She does.
And
Apparently.
I sent what I thought was a very cute video of her meowing less angrily
And she...
to Gabi, and Gabi responded, "I've never heard her so pissed." And I was like, no, this is way better than it was yesterday. This is like half as angry. We've made great strides.
And Smack had watched over Marina before and had texted this... That
she's very
makes
angry.
angry meows.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I had in my head what I think of as her angry meows are nowhere near whatever that was.
The whole world dims when Gabi is not there. And it is a wicked, ugly place, and we are pissed about it. Although I will say, the second time I cat sit, she just hated me from day 1 through 6, and then day 7 she was like, all right, whatever, you're here, there's a lap, I guess I'll lie in it. And I was just sitting there like absolutely frozen, like, oh, what do I do? And then I left on day 9.
And
We
now
had-
she'll be
we
back
had
to hating you.
1.5 days of like equilibrium,
Day 12.
and then I left.
Oh no.
I do love her. I
Oh, yeah.
love her because she is, 1, she's demonic, and 2, she's just a study in contradictions.
So, congratulations. That is what makes a poor little meow meow.
Oh,
Someone who
see,
is
it makes sense
objectively horrible. But you can't help but love them, and you're not sure why.
And I do love Marina. Like, I just adore her angry little heart.
So Manhattan.
Back to the book.
Manhattan is edging toward the blorbo part of this scale, because on page, he doesn't really ever do anything evil.
Right.
There's some suggestion that in his pre-Manhattan life, he was not such a great dude.
Yeah.
And he's trying really... So he's the only Burrow that has forgotten everything about himself
And
from
he
before.
doesn't mind that.
No.
He goes out of his way to not figure out his past.
And one of the big twists in the second book is learning who he was.
Yes.
Before. And whatever you're thinking is wrong.
Not true, because you told me what
Oh,
happened.
did I?
Yes,
Okay.
you did.
I spoiled
But
it
it
for
is an
Smack.
excellent twist.
Such a good twist. But it's one of those ones where I was like, I don't think that was planned from the first moment.
Probably not.
And would have been awesome if it had been planned and then like hinted at in ways that you would not, like you could not guess. And then in retrospect, it would have been like, that explains that little detail and that little detail and that tiny little.
So there wasn't enough foreshadowing in the prior book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was a very good twist otherwise. And yeah. So he's my poor little meow-meow and or blorbo, depending on where you draw that line.
I think that's fascinating. Because like in the first book, the rest of the burrows, you get each burrow's perspective. It goes back and forth.
Yeah.
And from Manny's perspective, like, he's just trying to do the right thing. And he doesn't, like, he's as confused as anyone else.
Yeah.
But, like, when you get to, like, the Bronx's perspective or Brooklyn, and they start side-eyeing him when he gets mad, like, you start to see the shape of him as, like, this scary-looking dude.
Yeah.
Who could pull out a knife or something.
Yes.
And, like, you don't get that when you're in his head at all.
Right. And he ends up throwing a knife at the woman in white in the second book. And it's that kind of thing, those moments that come out where you're like, don't mess with that, dude. But he also is so in love with Neek.
Yes.
And one of my...
The New York.
Yeah, sorry. Neek is the primary avatar of New York. And so one of my big emotional investments left over from the first book was to, like, see them come together.
Happy. Yes.
And since like
it was
Neek
adorable in the epilogue in the first one where Manny's like very badly trying to play it cool.
Yeah. That's like the whole second book. And that's the kind of shit I eat up.
I know you do.
So much.
With a spoon.
And since Neek is out for most of the first book, he's like, who? Like, why are you looking at me like that? Please.
Neek doesn't know what to do with Manny.
I don't like this at all. And Manny's trying so hard to be like polite and distant about it, and was like, I will wait until we know each other better to push this, and we'll go at your pace, or we won't go at any pace at all. We'll do whatever you want to do, but also I love you so much. And it's
failing so hard to play it cool.
Yeah, for someone like Manny, that's just so funny. And Laura's not nearly as invested in Manny.
Yeah, that's less of a Laura thing than a Gabi thing.
And so Manny's not a favorite of hers. Manny's very much a favorite of mine. So his emotional arc was a big part of the second book. So, like, I really enjoyed the second book. And everyone else is really awesome, except for
Staten Island.
Yeah. And she has her moments in the second book. She doesn't really redeem herself, but she learns to suck less. Like, learns that she's, however much she doesn't want to be, is part of a whole kind of deal. And elects to be part of that whole, so.
Finally.
But yeah, they were awesome. I was going to say, I want you to go read them, but I'm not even sure that's true. But
what?
I mean, because you didn't, like, super love them.
I mean, it was good.
Everyone should give them a shot.
Yes.
That's what I should say.
Yes. And apparently it's very, like, N.K. Jemisin sort of became famous with her Broken
Earth trilogy,
trilogy?
Which starts with the fifth season.
The fifth season, yeah. Which is apparently very, very, very different.
Okay.
So,
but she is supposed to be one of the best speculative writers of our time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, like,
and this was her love letter to New York.
Yes. And it very clearly is, like, I spent some time in New York. Not for me. But, like, the more you know about New York, the more you appreciate the stories.
Probably. I don't know anything about New York, and I don't really care that much about it, but you get different things out of it. It doesn't matter
that I don't want to live there, and I don't like it enough to live there. Like, her love of New York
shines right through.
Yeah, is very clear, which is really nice.
Yeah. I think that's the only other thing of note. I think we mentioned some of the other ones. I read Uncommon Charm by Emily Berg-Celine and Kat Weaver. Heart and Mercy, which we talked about. A couple other cute ones. Anything else you've read since Bingo? If you have any vocal cords left after...
I don't have a ton of vocal cords left. But The Absolute Book.
By Elizabeth Knox.
By Elizabeth Knox.
Future Gabi here again. Smack had plenty of vocal cords left to talk about The Absolute Book by Elizabeth Knox. And since then, I've managed to read it too. So we are going to save that content for another bonus episode once we have a chance to get together again and talk about my impressions and what we
both thought about everything that went on and the insanity that is the absolute book. So I'm going to fast forward with a couple of fun glimpses of what's to come.
I can see you trying to decide how to describe.
The first thing I'm going to start with, and she is possessed by a demon.
What?
And then, but like, it's just such a weird fucking book, and the epilogue. This book broke me. I think that's what this is. There's this saltwater crocodile, and then I thought, nope. Jesus Christ. Okay, let's move on.
Was there anything else
I don't
recently, or at least since summer, that you think is worth mentioning on your...
Into the Riverlands was really good. So it's another one where I read it, and then I finished it, and I was immediately like, I would understand this better if I started over. So I did.
Yeah! That's the third book in the Singing Hills cycle by Nevo, and we both read the first two.
And they're standalones. Like, they are...
And we love them so
They're really well written. They're really good. They're very unique. And they're just, like, craft-wise, they are just perfectly written. And they're really good stories.
Yeah.
And the third one is all about telling stories, which is great.
But I'm sulking about it, so it'll be a while until I read it, because...
Not about the story.
Oh, no, not about the story.
The publisher's behavior.
About decisions that were made. It's a Tor.com novella, right? So Tor.com has made this decision at some point in the last couple of years that instead of...
Tor.com has made some shifts in the last couple of years. They started as an offshoot of Tor Publishing, which does science fiction and fantasy for the adult range, I guess. I don't think they do YA. And so Tor.com was an offshoot that was originally cheap novellas. They were like $4 for ebooks. They offered them in paperback. And they were a response to... They were trying to get ahead out of the slowly growing popularity of novellas.
Right.
Which I would say, it hasn't peaked, but like novellas are popular
Right.
now. And they weren't 5 years ago.
Right.
So that's where Tor.com started. But like, that's not what they do anymore. That's not all they do.
So at some point in the last couple years, they've shifted from these cheap paperbacks and cheap ebooks to possibly, I think we kind of maybe touched on this with Psalm of the Wild Built by Becky Chambers, which is amazing. But
Also a novella.
Also a novella, released as hardback.
And the ebooks from Tor.com are not cheap anymore.
No.
They're like $12 for a novella.
And the hardcovers are like upwards of $20 at least, I think.
They're like...
So...
They're expensive now.
And even worse than that is now they don't release paperbacks at all. Not even like...
It's only
eventually,
hardbacks
like
and
start with
ebooks.
hardback, release paperback later. No, just hardback or ebook.
Because it turned into a thing of like collecting them. The paperbacks were cheap enough that people would collect. You just buy everything they put out because it's like $4 or
Right.
$10 for a paperback or whatever. And now I don't collect them.
Nope.
It is way too expensive to collect them.
And unfortunately, they made this decision in the middle of releasing the Singing Hills cycle. So the first two have been released as paperbacks, not as hardbacks at all. Into the Riverlands has been released as a hardback and probably will not be released as a paperback. So there's no way to make the match, and I'm really mad about it. So what I'm holding out for is either for Tor.com to figure out this is a horrible decision and start releasing things as paperbacks, at least at some point after, like either do the same cycle as
You would
novels,
think, right?
or I'm waiting for all of the Singing Hills cycle novellas to be out, because surely at that point they will do a
box
like
set.
omnibus
Yeah, they're
thing.
popular enough that like, but I've like, they're
so
standalone. They are completely self-contained, which I think is, to the extent that they are all self-contained, I think is unique.
Mm.
In that, like, you literally can pick them up at any point. And yeah, anyway, which means there's no like end of the arc. She could just keep releasing these every other year for the rest of her life if she felt like it.
Uh-huh.
They are that popular. They would keep buying them. But that means there will be no omnibus until that happens.
I'll wait forever.
If I ever meet her, I'm going to be completely unable to, like, stifle the, do you know when they'll come out in paper?
I know, I'm gonna be like, listen.
I know you have no control over it, but I need you to talk to somebody about this.
Alternatively, I would hate it, but alternatively, if they did re-release the first two as
In
hardback,
hardback.
then maybe.
Maybe.
I love them enough.
There's this show called Alaska Daily with Hilary Swank, and it's all about local journalism in Alaska and the missing indigenous women. But, like, the first episode was not the first episode. And it started in the middle of, like...
What do you mean the first episode wasn't the first episode?
Like, they didn't air the first episode, and then they aired... They called it the pilot, and you start watching, and it sort of makes sense, but, like, there's a lot of backstory you're missing, and then 3 weeks later, they released, like, the real first... I was so mad, and it took forever. Like, it was a good show, and I'm glad I watched it, but my mother did not understand why it took me so long to, like, settle the fuck down. So I was so mad. This is the same
the
level.
look I have right now.
Also, Tokuda-Hall doesn't do just novellas anymore.
Yeah.
Like, their end of the year photos that they put up on social media, they had a stack of every book they published in 2022, and like a quarter of them were novellas and the rest were novels. Very
Which, like,
standard.
good for them.
Yes.
But fix this problem!
Also, I want cheap novellas again. You know, I'm such a crybaby about it. It was so nice, though. But you know what happened? I know I've talked about this before, is that, like, the self-publishing world was like, hey, we can publish novellas for $4 instead of $1. And then Tor.com was like, no, we are elite. We are above self-publishing. We will charge $12 for a novella. Ebook!
Nah!
I know. It makes me insane. I hope the editor never listens to this.
If you're really worried about it, I'll cut it out.
They're never going to listen. That is an aspirational
If
word.
they have, we've made it a different way. It doesn't matter.
Yes.
Also, maybe if you listen, then maybe they'll fix it.
Make it work.
So anything else?
HarperCollins editorial staff are on a strike. Support the strikers.
They are?
Oh yeah. Oh my god, it's literally
Wait, still or a different one? Or
still. It's the longest strike in publishing industry history ever.
This has been going on for months?
It's like 45 days or something.
Holy nonsense.
Which will be either resolved or way more by the time this episode is aired.
Is it the type of strike where you should go get more HarperCollins books to
Where you
add
get the
stress?
same number of HarperCollins books
Okay.
but like don't stop buying them.
Okay.
Because that's...
So I know there are like two types of things where you can either pull support,
or
boycott,
push, yeah.
or you can, what's the word for, there's a word for it now that's not boycott, but something caught, where you like get more of it to add stress to the industry, so like
I
they're
don't
even
know
more
the word.
burdened by the lack of
I don't
it.
know the word.
It's like a
for it.
pro-cot or a, I don't remember. There's a word for it now, apparently. And I learned it and I was like, oh, how convenient. I have a word for that now, and then forgot it. So
Immediately, yes.
here we are.
I mean, it's mostly if you're a freelance editor or writer or whatever, like don't contract with them during the strike.
Okay.
But like if you're a reader, just keep buying whatever you're buying.
Okay.
You don't want to hurt the author as well. Everyone else is striking.
Yeah.
But apparently, HarperCollins is pulling from like publishing courses from like Columbia or whatever, like new grads to be scabs. I know. Which blows my mind because one, like how could you possibly want to go through life being or having been a scab? But also like publishing is such a small industry.
I wonder if like...
If you break the picket line your first year out of school?
But I wonder if it's your first year out of school, do you know enough about the
Nope.
industry
Nope.
to know that you're basically
So it's like
tanking your
interns.
entire career?
Yes. It's like
That's so
they don't
sad.
have the knowledge for all the databases. They don't know what they're doing. And also, when the strike finally ends, like everyone's gonna know you were a scab. it will affect the rest of your career. The money's not worth it. if you're going to do literally anything else in the world, don't break a picket line. I mean, that's not...
If you know not to.
Oh my god, everybody. Don't break a picket line.
Well, I mean, like...
I know. If you're a kid and if you're going to Columbia, you might not know.
You might be a little busy, too. But hopefully if you're looking for a
I'm
position...
talking about the rich kids.
Oh, I guess, yeah, there's that, too. I was thinking you're just, like, so busy with life and, like, you know, college concerns that you don't even, like, know to...
You would know. Because
Okay.
the whole industry is sort of, like, watching what's going to happen. Because it is the longest strike in publishing history. And they're still going. And HarperCollins managed. Like, these people are asking for so little.
I know.
Like, genuinely, they want their entry-level salary bumped up $5,000.
Yeah. And this is in New York.
In New York.
City.
Yes, New York City. The entry wage would be $50,000. A living wage in New York City is $70,000.
So it's still not enough to technically live in New York City. So...
And, like, the stories coming out of the people who are striking, like, there's this woman who's a longtime editor, and she is finally, like, not a senior editor, but, like, middle, and she has had 7 roommates at one point. She had to crowdfund to go to her grandfather's funeral.
Sounds right.
And then
live in the
her
worst time,
grandfather left her some money, and she used that money to go visit her sick mother. And, like, you can hear that she doesn't enjoy peddling her trauma for benefit, but, like, no one else has to go through that shit. There is no other industry that, like, treats people so poorly.
Except railroads.
Oh my god. Anyway.
On that cheery note.
Oh my god.
Anything else fun you read?
I don't think so. Singing Hills, absolute book, fucking elder races. Necessity of Stars. That one was weird. I don't have a ton to say about it, but it was very Ted Chiang. Oh, by E. Catherine Tobler.
Okay.
And The Necessity of Stars. It's a Neon Hemlock novella.
I think you mentioned that was coming out at one point.
I was very interested in it because it plays with memory. You know, and like who knows what when. And it should have been catnip. It wasn't catnip. But I think you might enjoy it more that way.
Okay.
Less of a smack book and more of a
We'll see.
middle ground book.
Okay.
It was like the epilogue of The Devourers meets Ted Chiang.
What a fascinating thing to say. The Devourers, by the way, is by Indra Das.
Indra Das. And there's a twist in the epilogue of that book.
Which I don't remember, but...
By...
Oh no, I have to reread The Devourers.
Oh, no.
Dang it!
It's a very violent, gory, gross werewolf
Oh,
book.
so good.
It was so good. It was so good.
I think that's one of the first things...
I made you read? Yes.
You made me read / one of the first Smack Shelf books, probably. It's one of the first things you handed to me when I
literally
moved to
the
San
first,
Diego.
because I went to a conference and I was talking to, he wasn't the editor, but it was a friend who works for Clarion West up in Seattle, and Clarion West was where the author studied, and so this friend, Hugh, had an arc, and he was like, I will give it to you if you promise to leave reviews. And I was like, of course, definitely. And then I read it, and then I was like, and now my mother has to read it, and now Gabi has to read it, and who else can I hand it to?
I remember...
I must do my duty with this book.
I remember that being the first book you handed me after moving to San Diego, and then I read it, and it was very good. It's very violent, very dark.
So dark.
And I remember being like, is this gonna be every book she hands me? Because I gotta be braced if this is the norm.
That's the funniest thing I've ever heard.
And that's why I was losing it so often when you were like, oh, I'm not a big horror person. And I was like, are you freaking kidding?
Oh my god.
So
To
funny.
be fair, that was probably the first horror I'd read since...
Probably, yeah.
Oh god, I don't know. I didn't read horror in high school. I read The Handmaid's Tale in college, which...
I've still dodged that bullet.
Oh my god, it's so... I didn't watch the show, but like, that book, man, that's rough. I think it's especially rough recently.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think
Of
you
course.
missed your clean shot to read it.
When I could have handled it,
Yeah.
maybe.
And you were like, oh shit, this was in the... And the only reason you can tell it was written in the 80s is like there's a payphone somewhere.
Wow.
I know. The rest of it is just like... Oh, the one thing that stays... I read it 2012, I read it. So it was 11 years ago. And the one thing that has really... I mean, there are many things that I remember, but the one thing that really stands out is that there's this flashback where the main character...
This is by Margaret Atwood, by the way.
Yes, obviously. Handmaid's Tale
In
by
case
Margaret
you
Atwood.
don't
In
know
case
that.
You've been living under a rock for the last 10 years. There's this flashback where the main character is... Things are getting worse socially, but like it's not a full-on dystopia yet. And there's the moment where women are declared non-citizens. And so your husband or your father, or in some cases your brother, all of a sudden they own everything that you did own. It's all theirs. And there's this moment where like the main character loves her husband. They have a really good relationship. He's horrified by all this. But there's this moment of disconnect where she's like, it doesn't matter how much we love each other. He has control that I will never have. And he'll never understand what it's like to lose it.
You read Kindred by Octavia Butler,
I
right?
haven't. I need to read it and I haven't read it.
There's like almost like the exact
Yes.
same dynamic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've heard. And if you haven't heard, Kindred is being turned into a show on HBO.
I don't know that I can handle it.
I don't know if
Especially
I
not on HBO.
I know. HBO doesn't pull punches.
Uh-uh.
Luckily, quote unquote, luckily, my brother's canceling his HBO subscription. Oh well.
But now you'll never be able to watch Our Flag Means Death.
What?
You'll never be able to
Oh,
watch Our Flag Means Death.
I didn't know that was on
Unless
there.
you come visit me.
Oh no.
Okay.
Because I'm so good about watching shows.
I know. So Our Flag Means Death is like 8 or 10 episodes, the first season.
Yeah, it's fairly short.
And each one's like
Perfect.
less than half an hour.
Oh.
But let me tell you.
I thought they were hour
Oh
long.
no, they're tiny. Okay, I know you're really missing out. So here's the thing though, and I warn you because no one warned me. Although now it doesn't really matter because the second season should be out. But here's the thing.
Oh, no.
And I'm warning everyone who's listening to this now too. The first season ends very sadly.
No!
It's very upsetting. And it's like I'm not sure cliffhanger is the right word, but the emotional resolution is lacking.
Oh no!
And it's open-ended and things are
That's
bad.
why the internet exploded.
Probably. And no one I knew, I think Maria, who I think listens to this podcast, I told her, I was like, I stayed up, I like watched the whole thing in like a day.
No.
And so I stayed up until like past midnight and I texted her at like 1 a.m. and I was like, because she's the one who was like, we watched the first episode together.
You went home and binged it.
No, not even like at the same time. We watched the first one together and then like months later I was like, oh, I finally watched Our Flag Means Death. It was funny. Ha ha ha. And I texted her at 1 a.m. and I was like, what have you done? And she was like, oh no, I didn't tell you not to watch. You know.
Oops.
And I was like, I find it very encouraging that you were immediately horrified by this knowledge and probably would have warned me, and maybe she did, and I forgot.
Oh.
But mistakes were made.
Oh my god.
This was like early December, and then I was like, when's the second season gonna come out? January 4th is the answer. Future Gabi here again, because joke's on past Gabi, because I misread my Google search and January 4th is like nothing. It's like the UK production release date, and the second season of Our Flag Means Death isn't due to come out until like summer of 2023 at the soonest. There is no release date yet, so I'm still sitting here staring into space, reflecting on my mistakes.
Christ.
So without now, I have
You
to.
had some crazy eyes going.
I can't even. It's so hard to explain because the first episode is like hilarity. It's this fish out of water comedy. This guy is like an upper crust.
does not belong on a pirate
Does
ship.
not
But he's decided he's gonna run a pirate ship, and his crew is all like pirates. And they're all like, why are we... He's bad at it. And they're like half-heartedly planning a mutiny. And then someone tells him that they're planning a mutiny, and he's like, we just gotta get morale up. And he treats the whole thing like, you know, produce a positive working environment or whatever. It's hysterical. And so he's like, we're gonna like actually go and pillage another ship or whatever. And the whole thing is just this like painfully hilarious comedy of this guy who's just so bad at being a pirate, but wants to be a pirate so bad. And then a few episodes in meets Blackbeard,
Yes.
who's the most piratey pirate
To ever pirate.
But like, because of like leading up reasons, Blackbeard doesn't immediately kill him, because Blackbeard's like, wow, this guy has a lot of like, is very strange and very daring. A lot of miscommunication going on here. So Blackbeard's at first like wants to just see what this dude's deal is. And so then they form this like very interesting friendship where Blackbeard just kind of wants to see what this dude is about. And is then just like so fascinated by like the shenanigans. And he's kind of like, let's it keep happening. And like Steed, who's like the guy just is so bad at being
really
a pirate.
bad pirate, yeah.
It's just like, we're all friends and we're all out here to be pirates on the big blue sea together.
Don't tell me. There's a butt in here.
No, and then it's precious.
Okay.
And they form a friendship. And more than a friendship.
I know.
And it develops over the course of the season. And then everything halfway through the 9th episode is perfect.
Oh my god.
And I should have known. Because I was like, oh no, this is so good and so perfect and everything's fine. But it's halfway through the 9th episode. And there's only 10 episodes. And I was like, okay, so this episode's going to end very badly.
But things couldn't have...
Narratively, I was like, okay, this is halfway through the penultimate episode. This episode is going to end badly. And I was like, okay, that's fine. They have a whole nother episode to fix it, right? Yeah. And then the first season will end and it'll be fine, whatever, and they'll live happily ever after.
I know what happened because I got to watch all of my Twitter mutuals
melt down.
Yeah, for months. And like losing their shit trying to get a second season signed on.
Yes! I'm very late to the party, and I very much avoided all the discourse because I didn't want spoilers. I can understand why the whole internet melted down. Anyway.
I didn't realize. Like, I thought they were just, like, so into it. I didn't put it together, like, the last episode would destroy anyone. Because it's such a, like, happy, funny show.
Oh, yeah. Until it isn't!
Oh my god. Well.
And it's like the pipeline from this is such a funny, goofy show, and this is such a romp, and I'm just having so much fun with these ridiculous characters and this like very sudden wanton violence at weird moments. This is so great. And then you're just like, I will die for these characters, and I can't. And then you're texting your friends at 1 a.m. having a meltdown. It's great.
Yeah, sounds like it. I am sad though. I thought they were hour long. Like I thought it was like a real commitment.
No, it's a different kind of commitment.
It will live in your head rent free forever.
Yep, it's true. I don't know how they're gonna fix it.
But the second episode's out. Season.
I don't know if they released the whole season at once. Or
God!
I
hate it when they do that.
I haven't had time to like sit down and.
I don't understand why anyone would do the weekly thing anymore.
I don't know.
It's dumb.
But I want to go back and rewatch the first season.
Yeah.
Before I inflict this upon myself. And I simply have not had time.
Mm-hmm. You're busy.
Mm-hmm. So, we'll see. I don't mind putting it off until I'm strong and have a nice chunk of time to...
A day. To power through it.
And maybe get halfway through the 9th episode and be like, okay,
I'm done. I'll just wait a year. It'll be fine. That's good to know, though.
Yes, now you're warned.
Halfway
and you are
through
warned.
The 9th episode.
Mm-hmm.
She's pointing at the
I'm pointing at you, listener. Anywho, I don't know how to end this. Here's
hoping. I don't know if you do want something that breaks your brain or don't. Like, clearly our flag means death broke you.
Yes.
And the absolute book broke me.
Mm-hmm. In very different
In
ways.
very different ways.
So here's hoping you...
Are gently broken by something you don't mind being broken by.
Yes. It's a good way to put it.
Yes.
Amazing.
Break me gently.
That's gonna be the episode title.
This has been another episode of Infinite TBR. You can find us on our Twitter at Infinite TBR.
And we are individually on Twitter as @WhatSmackSaid and @Gabalodon, which is like Megalodon, but Gab in the front of it. And you can find all our show notes at infiniteTBR.com. If you have book recommendations for us or questions you want answered during the podcast, feel free to email us at itbrshelf@gmail.com.